So, good evening, everyone, on this Tuesday night, the final night of the International Mental Health Festival. And it's actually also the final event of this festival. So we have the privilege to close it up. And we will close it up with a very interesting topic tonight. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Laura, and I will be your moderator for tonight. With me is Vanessa Murri, and I will introduce her a little bit in a short notice. First, some quick household messages. Vanessa is gonna tell us a fairy tale, as you know, and afterwards we were gonna have a short discussion about it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A button below. You can type your questions there. You can also view the questions that are already asked. So if you see an interesting question or a question that you wanted to ask yourself, please give it a thumbs up and we will see it move to the top of the list so that we know what questions are important to you. So that for the practicalities. Now I will introduce Vanessa Murri. She is a clinical psychologist born in Berlin, and she developed a great interest for cultural diversity and the way people interact with each other. After that, she moved to the south of France to study psychology, and also in her practical work, she has dealt with a lot of ways of communication, both verbal and non-verbal, and how emotions and feelings and people's philosophy interact with ways of communication. So she's back in Berlin now, and she works as a clinical psychologist at Still Point Spaces, and she still focuses on healing people and also keeping that artistic and cultural perspective in mind. So, Vanessa, I'm really happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having invited me to this festival. I'm very happy to present the fairy tale here. Yeah, you have said already a lot of things about me. It's true, I'm here in Berlin in our practice. And the fairy tale, I have written it for an artistic project. We wanted to send psychoeducative elements to people who don't know yet anything about addiction and about psychology. So we have created a film project together with some artists, together with other psychologists, and I wrote the concept for 10 films about psychoanalytical theories behind addiction, and yeah, and we made for every part of the theoretic elements, we made a film. So the fairy tale was part of a film that is called Drive, and yeah, the story is about a man who is addicted to crystal meth, and he kind of tells the story, and yeah, he describes through the story his addiction and his experience with addiction. But still, it's an artistic work. It's an abstract work. Yeah, and I would like you to read it, just to enjoy it. If you have questions about it, of course, you can write us. Yeah. So I would start reading. Laura, are you here? Okay.
1 second, I will prepare the PowerPoint.
Okay. Yeah, I forgot to say that it was an artistic work together with someone who who prepared drawings. So we read part of a text and it belongs together with a picture. So thank you, Laura, again for having prepared this. Okay. Once upon a time, there was a river. His name was Mana. The father of all gods, Makemake, had sent him over from another world behind the mountains and islands. New landscapes should blossom out of Mana's springs in shades of yellow, red, and blue. Flowers would turn into sweet fruits, and fields would yield abundant crops. Mana flowed across the fields, playing with the rocks along its bank. Both humans and animals were thankful for him. He was courageous and strong, and one day a burning desire to reach the ocean started growing in him. A shrimp had once told him there was a place where one could attain immortality and dive into the depths of infinity. Thus, Mana went on a quest for that unknown place behind the hills of the island. One day, as he was slowly getting tired, he noticed a young woman sitting on his bank. She had long black hair and was singing a soft melody. Everything stood still around her. Mana had never seen a creature of such purity and beauty, and all he wanted was to belong to her. As she stood up in order to go back to town, he started following her. Everything his heart wished was to stay there, have the young woman swim in his waters, caress her skin with his stream, and float around her. The young woman was also charmed by Mana's soul and by his aspect. How he sparkled with the sunlight, how his soft waves told her the most exciting stories, and how mind-blowing it was to look deep into his tones of blue. The villagers had named the young woman Tapu, who became the guardian of the blue spring, a saint who had summoned the river, providing everyone with water and nourishment. The gods became suspicious of the joy taking place in the village. Mana started to change its shape. His arms shrank more and more, and his waters, vital to nature, could not reach the mountains, the grasslands, or the fields anymore. The gods asked him to retreat from the village, but he would not listen. All of his efforts were focused on taking the form of a lake that would be visited every night by Tapu. In time, Tapu's village became the only place on the island where trees would still stand, where flowers would still blossom, and where birds would still delight humans with their song. The gods sent a message to Tapu warning that her village and everything that she loved would see horrible disgraces if she was to bathe again in the waters of the lake. Tapu, having developed deep feelings for Mana, immediately rushed to his shore. She cried and explained to Mana that it was the last time they would see each other. Endless tears dropped from her eyes down the warm ground. Mana started collecting her tears and, as if by magic, turned them into a glittering cloud that fell on to the young woman, working as a protecting cloak. The cloud danced around Tapu, caressed her cheeks, and played with her long black hair. "Look, my dear Tapu, what your beauty has created," said Mana. Tapu smiled. "We can call this cloud Tokelau, fruit of the northern winds that brought you to me and gave me the greatest of joys," she said. Mana and Tapu saw each other united by Tokelau until the end of times. "I will bring you both to the ocean, Tapu," said softly the lake, as it realized she had fallen asleep on its shore. By the time the young woman woke up the next morning, the sun was shining again. The wrath of the gods aroused when they discovered that Tapu had met Mana again. The young woman was terribly scared. She was afraid of not having kept her word, hence defying the power of heaven. On the other hand, she would have never been able to leave Tokelau and Mana. At a frantic speed approached Uoka, the god of destruction. In his dusky and unappeasable rage, he forced the sun to shine incessantly until the crops would wither and Mana would shrink to become a poor marsh. The once glorious river became a small tarn and could not move anymore. Uoka shook his enormous wings, blowing Tokelau away and sending it far behind the hills of the island. Tapu could not see the cloud anymore. She was desperate and endlessly begged the gods for forgiveness. But nothing would soothe them. Another god, known as Kararere, approached the village. He wanted to bring some rain and give strength to Mana, who was on the brink of drying out. He wanted to remind him what his main duty was, bringing fertility to the land. Thus he sent squalls and huge grey clouds, out of which heavy drops of rain started falling on the ground. The deluge stopped only when Mana had grown bigger and stronger than ever before. He looked around, trying to find Tokelau and Tapu, as he wanted to protect them from the wrath of the growth and keep them safe. After some time, Mana finally became aware of his new body. He was astonished at his new dimensions. He felt strong, powerful, and invincible. All of a sudden, Mana remembered his dream to reach the sea. This time, his new size would allow him to flow across the hills of the island with ease and finally become immortal by becoming one with the ocean. I could be more than only a river, a single river or a lake on the island. I could be immortal, thought Mana to himself as he looked at the horizon and left the village behind. At that moment, Tapu had come back to Mana and desperately tried to hold him back. She sensed something had changed inside him. She called him, but Mana would not listen. She stood on his way, but he would not see her. He could not even listen to the last words of Tapu as she shouted and cried. He was invaded by his growing desire to transcend the barriers of the earthly. Uncontrollable waves and turbulent waters flooded the village and Tapu's body along with her tears, her sorrow, and her love. Mana had lost contact with reality. His look was fixed upon the hills, getting closer and closer to the sea. Such a feeling of power had he never felt before. As he reached the horizon and dove into unknown waters, Mana had not realized he was carrying the salt of Tapu's tears within him. The cloud Tokelau was circling around the hills not far from Mana. It had survived the storm and was observing how Mana mixed his sparkling waters with those of the sea. Tokelau was sad and did not want to belong to the river anymore, as it knew it was only because of the tears of Tapu that Mana had become so sparkling. It also knew that Mana had swallowed the village and Tapu herself. Tapu had to be freed again. Thus Tokelau spat out Tapu's tears, blowing them towards the moon, tears that had once given birth to the cloud itself. Thousands of blinking lights started shining up in the night sky and reflecting on the surface of the sea, turning darkness into glitter. Mana stood an A of the fascinating variety found under the ocean since he had merged with it. The salt contained in his waters originated bright corals. Colorful fish would splash around, starfish would smile, and Mana's color had turned into a light turquoise blue. In the sea dwelled god Tangaroas. He observed the transformation of its kingdom with excitement and wanted to discover where it all had come from. He turned to Mana and asked where he had obtained the salt which had brought the ocean to such a blossoming. Mana was scared as he realized he had no answer to that question. In that very moment, he became aware of what he had left behind and tried to flow back to the land. However, he who becomes one with the sea shall never find his way back. Dear Tangaroas, how can I flow back to the island? Asked Mana to the god of the sea. Give me a salt, and I will help you, said the god. Mana left his shining salts back in the streams of the ocean and flowed back to the land through a labyrinth of cliffs. As he arrived, he found out the island had become an arid desert. Mana could not understand what had happened. How was it possible to forget about Tapu and Tokelau? He had to find them back. The river flowed again with various streams through mountains, reaching the few remaining forests. Plants could grow back on its banks. Animals and humans could be born again. Unaware of the fact that Tapu shone every night up in the sky and Tokelau had become a soft, nourishing breeze, the river flowed around day after day. And times, broken-hearted and afraid to have lost both of them forever, at times full of hope and excitement to find them again. Mana stayed alone forever. The gods looked at him from the hills. They had warned him a long time ago. Mana had not listened and had failed their tests. With a condescending smile on their faces, they observed the unfortunate destiny of Mana, whose incessant quest for love had unfolded only too late after he had encountered it in the purest of its forms and ignored it out of his own vanity. End. Thank you for having listened.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I now realized how much how sentimental this actually was to listen to someone read a story to you, because of course we're used to hear that as a kid, the fairy tales, the bedtime stories. But in contrast, I don't think this one had a happy ending, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a bit tragic, actually. It's a tragic story, and I wrote it like a fairy tale for adults as well.
Yeah.
A bit of fairy tale for adults. So you become a child maybe when you read it, and in the same time you stay adult when you think about the sense behind.
Yes, because there are a lot of different topics that are addressed. I think I felt greed, I felt loss, vanity, of course, which is also stated in the last page. Can you tell a bit about what kind of message you wanted to tell with this story?
I mean, actually, when we use it for the film, it was like a love story between this boy who starts taking a drug, and in the film the drug is a girl, so they start dancing with each other, so meeting with each other, so it's symbolic. In the fairy tale, the meaning behind the woman is like the seduction, the river is the drive who makes us moving, you know, and the seduction takes the river a bit, or cuts a bit the river's way, and yeah, and takes him to the village, and then he loses his initial motivation to move and to reach something else.
Yeah.
And in the same time, his movement keeps the world alive. So yeah, it's for the film, this story symbolized the fusion between a person who is addicted to a drug, and how the drug gets more and more impact on the person who takes the drug. And finally, they don't know anymore how to get out of it and how to continue moving in your everyday life.
It's really the relationship between,
it's
between
exactly.
the user and the substance. Yeah.
So, but the film was only about the first part of the fairy tale, and so we focused really on this topic. The second part, yeah, we did not finish the second film that would have included the second part of the fairy tale.
Yeah.
But the first message was, yeah, to symbolize this fusion between two persons or two objects or whatever.
Sort of a symbiotic relationship.
Exactly.
Where they're so dependent on each other. Yeah.
And that who get more and more depending. In the beginning, it's a symbiosis, and then it develops to something else, like a dependency, a fusion, not anymore able to separate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was thinking, because in the beginning, it seems like a Tapu is the drug, is the one who is leading Mana Mana away from his destiny to grow. But in the end, you see that Mana itself had grown because of the rain that has fallen down, because of the god who sent the rain. And then he's sort of, how do you call it? He gets like bigger than he actually is, and too big for his own good. And then it seems like Tapu was actually trying to slow him down to get him back to the ground. That's at least how I interpreted it, because I felt, how did I see that right? Like, how do you see I felt like the relationships were shifting at some point.
Yeah, because the god comes and triggers actually his narcissistic part. So he's growing and growing, and the initially healthy narcissistic part, who makes him maybe moving or wanting to reach something bigger, transforms into something too big. So a real narcissistic behavior, or a real narcissistic being that forgets about anything else. And it's actually, yeah, this narcissistic love he has for himself that will finally destroy the relationship maybe he had with Tapu, or with Tokelau, with the cloud.
Yes.
Yeah. And
so,
I mean,
sorry. What did you want to say?
No, I wanted to listen to you.
So I was wondering, what was it like for you to write this story? Because of course it was in connection with the Drive movie, with the project on addiction. But how did this writing process go for you? And can you take us on a trip throughout that?
Wow. Okay. It was. Yeah, it was creative writing. I really enjoyed it. Next to therapeutic work, next to scientific work, maybe that I also prepared in former times for the university. And I just really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the development also of the pictures, because this was also a super interesting project. We had first the text, and then a friend of mine created those images, the drawings, and this was also a super interesting process. So finally, we said, okay, the text cannot be anymore without the images, and the images cannot be without the text. So maybe it represented a bit what happened in the fairy tale. So they belong together.
Mm-hmm. That's also what you see. The pictures are so beautiful, and we also discussed this when we had like this brief talk before the Zoom, that they are so they really guide each other into the story. Yeah.
Thanks. I will tell my friend. She will be very happy.
Please do. I see that we also have a question in the Q&A.
Okay.
It's from Andre, and he says, wonderful story. One can identify a lot with elements from myths, legends, and other fairy tales. I am
Oh.
wondering, did you find inspiration from folklore?
From folklore?
Yes, from a more, how do you call it? Wow, I lost my words. Like from older stories, from older cultural stories.
I got some elements from a Japanese fairy tale that I really, really love.
Mm-hmm.
Where there was also like two people in love, and the woman was a god, and she could only come down to earth by night, and she falls in love with the human, and actually she's also punished by the gods, by Japanese gods, and she sends the guy on earth, also the guy who has to stay, as he is a human, to stay on earth. She sends him every night messages by sending her tears to the sky, and then they become stars. So this was an element exactly that I took from another fairy tale, because I really like this picture, to get in contact with someone through stars and through tears. And then the names came from Polynesian fairy tales, and they have a meaning. For example, mana is, when you translate it, it is drive. The meaning is drive and movement.
Mm-hmm.
And tapu is like taboo.
Mm-hmm.
It's like something forbidden. So yes, it has a meaning, and it's symbolic, yes. And the other names from the gods are also like the one in the beginning. What is his name? Makemake. I'm sorry. Makemake is in the Polynesian fairy tale culture. It's the father of all gods. So I took it a bit from there.
So you really did study a lot of fairy tales from other cultures as well.
A bit, yes.
Yeah, what do you see when you look at differences between fairy tales and themes throughout different cultures? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
The topics and the emotions that come up.
Yeah, for example, something that that stuck with you from reading those fairy tales from different cultures.
I mean, I really liked in those Japanese fairy tales that one can be described as a bad person who can do horrible things, and in the same time there will always be a moment where you find out that he has also a good part in his soul. It's something I really, really like in Japanese stories, and also mangas. I really love mangas.
Mm-hmm.
And this tragic, that one can be horrible and have a beautiful inside and a beautiful heart in the same time. This is something I keep from Asian, fairy tales that I've read. I mean, I also like in German fairy tales that it's a lot with animals, and that the symbolic is, that animals can speak. So it's more like, for me, it's more ironic, but I don't know if this is anyone's interpretation. Yeah, I mean, it's just another culture. You see culture in fairy tales, and the language is different. And so the emotions that come through the words are also different.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see from German fairy tales like a strong moral message very often. And then in those Asian fairy tales, it's more like this tragic, and the pain of losing, or not being able to do something good because you are deeply hurt. Yeah.
You also see a lot of that in this fairy tale, I think. A lot of tragedy, a lot of story about suffering, but also what you said, there is not, in my opinion, of course, everyone can have a very different interpretation of it, but in my opinion, I don't see that there's any good or a bad guy in this story. Everyone has its moments of pureness, and its moments of darkness, and like you said, in the Asian fairy tales, that's always a big topic. So I thought that was very beautiful in this fairy tale as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you have this tragic, it's true. In the end, for me, it's also a happy end, because the river continues its way. He continues moving, whatever his intention is. I mean, finally he saves the world around him, because without his water, the world wouldn't survive. So in the end, for the gods, it's good, because a new world could exist.
Yeah.
They reach their goal, so they have a happy end. And he's also, I mean, for him it's tragic, because he, from time to time, he hopes to find Mana, and to find Tokelau and the girl and Tapu, and he doesn't know that he will never find them.
And that they're always around him.
It's ironic in the same time for me.
Yeah. So you work a lot with culture and with art in different forms, as your role of as a psychologist. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, and why this became such a passion for you?
That I work internationally?
No, with that art and culture, that is a passion for you. How did that come?
It's a hard question, actually.
Yes.
I mean, no, but it's an emotional thing. I was always passionate by other cultures. I traveled since always. I like different types of cultures. I like languages. I think every culture sends another message. I like those different messages. It helps me to understand where I live, what my life means. I mean, it's a personal thing, and I wanted to connect, of course, my these interests with my job. Yeah, and that's that's it, actually.
Yeah. How do you use it in your work?
My art, because I mean, art is another way to speak. We can speak with words. We can speak even through statistics. So there are people who like numbers. There are people who like written word. There are people who like listening to others. And I like also communication through art. And also I like to develop different ways of informing or talking about psychology. And for me, those pictures or fairy tales or also film work could be another way of symbolize things, to put them in other words, or to give them to give them to give them a form. Yeah, exactly.
A form beyond the normal day-to-day language that you would see in practice as a therapist with clients or patients.
Yeah, because I mean, you can, in psychoeducation, for example, you can teach someone what addiction means, for example. Yeah, but then maybe he knows it rationally, but he doesn't feel it. And then he can watch a film, or he can go to a group with other people who know about addiction or who have experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can experience it in another way. They can maybe understand the dynamic behind it. They can see it from another perspective. And I guess as a psychotherapist, it's also an interesting work to open different perspectives on one topic, and also link to what the client or the patient is able to understand and to feel. So for us, this was really a new way to talk about addiction. And it finished actually with, it finished with a book. Mm-hmm. One of the artists wrote then about his experience with addiction, because he had a personal, a personal experience with it. This was then finally the written word, and we published this in combination with the films. So the people who read the book had also the opportunity to watch the films, and then to have another medium to understand, because addiction still, is a topic that so many people think, you can decide if you want to continue or not. And with all different psychological symptoms, it's often the case that people don't know how to deal with it, and don't understand what it means. And in Berlin, our work here also in the practice started with the idea to inform people who never heard about psychology or never spoke about it, who never had experiences with it, to catch them, to get them interested, and to start talk about it, to take their fear a bit concerning this topic.
Is there a lot of fear around psychotherapy or around talking about it, like because you mention it now?
I don't know what is your experience in the Netherlands, but a lot of people who have psychological problems, in my opinion, are still stigmatized or not understood, or people think, oh, but it's a decision, or you have to be stronger, or you have to work harder, then you will not suffer. Mm-hmm. For some issues, in my opinion, it's still taboo to talk about it. Yeah.
So you really strive to break that taboo.
Yeah, I try to.
It is very important.
It is.
There's another question.
Really?
Yes. It's about like the type of narrative that could be very useful to understand complex psychological situation. Do you use these fairy tales in your clinical practice?
In my in my clinical practice, I have not used it in my sessions, but I mean, as I said before, it's part of this bigger film project, and therefore I used it. So we have shown the films in small cinemas in Berlin. We invited people who were interested in the topic. We presented the project on an event from the Ministry for Health in Germany. Yeah, but the content of the text, I didn't use it yet, but it would be an idea, of course. And to see what part of the fairy tale triggers which what is triggered then inside of the client when they hear it. Yes. And I forgot, I mean, this never happened with the fairy tale I wrote, but when I worked in the clinic a few years ago, we had like a fairy tale group.
Oh, wow.
And we together with another psychologist there, we chose fairy tales to read them together with our patients from the clinic. It was with psychotic patients, and we had like a reading group, and the patients could even bring fairy tales they liked, and then we read them together, and we discussed them, and we looked what was triggered inside of them and what they connected to the story. It was really interesting.
What did you see during those moments? What happened?
Yeah, I mean, you saw that some of the people reacted very intensively to certain topics in the fairy tale. I mean, I cannot say anymore in detail which fairy tale triggered which patient, but you had emotional reactions that were different from normal conversations. Then the people started telling stories about their lives that they connected to the content of the fairy tale. They were developing ideas like playing the fairy tale, like psychodrama. So they became creative, and they practiced they discovered their imagination, and they started to fantasize about things.
What kind of effects did that have on them, besides from the emotional reactions that they had during the sessions? But did you also see that it helped them in their therapeutic process?
Yeah, as I said, I mean, they developed their fantasy, which is often a problem when you work with psychotic patients, that they are not able anymore to distinguish between what is fantasy, what is reality, and so they learn more and more to distinguish. I mean, of course, it's I mean, not in 2 weeks.
No.
They also, what we saw is that they were really active as a group. So this medium helped us to create a group that was not acting in a problematic way with each other. And then we also used it to discuss ambivalence. So to find good things in one fairy tale, not good things. So we trained this as well.
Yeah. So you were actually discussing very important topics, such as recognizing yourself in stories and in situation, and as ambivalence, and connecting with each other, and role playing with each other. But it was on a very different level than you would normally have in just a regular group therapy session.
Yeah, I mean, it was more analytical based. So it was not the typical CBT group session, but yeah. I would not say that it's more complex or less complex. It's just another way of working.
Mm-hmm.
And the frame was similar. We had around 1 hour and a half. And also, of course, from time to time, it was not possible. It was not possible for every patient to go there or to stay the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
But it created a positive dynamic.
Did
Or
they
from
like
time
it?
to time. Sorry?
Did they like it? Did they like to do it?
Yeah. Some of them liked it, others didn't so much. They left also the group.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, um, yeah. No, of course. And it started then after a few weeks that they also brought their own fairy tales.
Yeah.
And that they became also active in the process to support the content of what we talked about. And yeah, they became active. It was a really nice work. My colleague wrote her thesis about this.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah.
I think it's amazing that new ways of therapy are emerging. For example, with fairy tales, because as you given these examples, I hear that it gives lovely effects, and that people connect on a very different level with each other within such a group.
And
What is
I
the way forward for you?
sorry.
What do you think about like the ways forward? What role can art, fairy tales, or any other sort of artistic medium have within the treatment of psychotherapeutic problems?
I mean, I think it's a very human way to work with people who have psychological difficulties and illnesses. So I guess, yeah, and this is what it, in my opinion, makes it so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I could imagine that, especially in a clinical context, could be very useful. I'm sorry, did I answer your question? Can you repeat it, maybe?
Yes, yes, you did. My question was, what do you think? What do you hope for the future in terms of utilizing these tools within psychotherapy?
I hope that we would use it more, actually, and that I mean, of course, the medical support is very important as well. I don't want to deny this, and I guess that um, yeah, for certain psychological issues, it's even important to support the psychotherapy with medical treatment. But in the same time, this other side of psychotherapy is also important, that we work through, yeah, creativity, that because it's also part of us. I mean, we are not, or the people who have difficulties are not only their disease or not only their suffering, there are so much more. And I guess that we have also to support this when we want to be good therapists, and when we want to work in a multidisciplinary approach, which in my opinion is a very good way to work. So it's for me it's important that we have more diversity also in therapy, and that also different approaches can connect. I mean, yeah.
Working together.
Yes,
Yes.
this is the message.
Beautiful. I don't have any more questions, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to share? You think is important to close this evening off?
No, just a huge thank you that you have listened, and also for the preparation and for this invitation. and it was really fun. And it was an interesting experience to have this online as well. It's for me the first time to have such a conversation online. I'm used to have this in person, and it's nice. We are now connected in 2 different countries, or I don't know where the other people who listen are from.
Mhm.
But yeah, so nice. Although I hope that we will also meet one day in person, Laura.
We can make that happen.
Cool.
Yes, of course. Once we are able to, I would love to talk more about this and to share more experiences with each other.
Okay.
And I want to thank you so much for being here tonight to inspire us with the beautiful fairy tale and your perspectives around it. I definitely learned a lot tonight, and I think it was a beautiful ending of this International Mental Health Festival. So thank you so much.
I feel honored to end it.
Yes. Thank you as well to the people who are here this night, and to the people who have asked us questions. Andre also thanks you very much for this wonderful event. So thank you for participating.
Aww. Thank you.
And I want to wish everyone a great evening.
I wish you a great evening as well.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye.